Welcome to our video lesson on converting between decimals and fractions. To start, there's two special types of decimals that we're going to talk about. The first one is my favorite. It's the terminating decimal, and it makes me think of the Terminator. And the Terminator ends things. So a terminating decimal is a decimal that ends or does not repeat. These are the examples of terminating decimals are 3.2 or 0.25. Any decimal that ends or does not repeat. The other type of decimal is a repeating decimal. And it is a decimal that repeats the last digits or group of digits. Now, you can tell if a decimal is a repeating decimal because it usually has a line over the top to show that it goes on forever. Examples will be like 1.3 with a line on top, and that means that that 3 goes on to infinity or goes on forever. Down below I have 5 decimals written out. I would like you to pause the video and either circle the ones that you think are terminating decimals and put a box around the ones that you think are repeating decimals, or use two different color highlighters to differentiate between them. So pause the video now and try that. When you're done, click play. Okay, so I'm going to use yellow for the terminating decimals. So first I'm going to start by highlighting those. I know that 1.25 and 0.08 are terminating decimals, which means they don't repeat. And I will use orange for the repeating decimals. So I know that 4.3333 and 9.24, I know that these are all repeating decimals. Now it's important to say that whatever the line is over is what repeats. So for example, with this 9.24, it means that it's 9.24242424, and the 24 keep repeating to infinity. Same with this 0.12345. It's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that continues on to infinity. So now that we know the different types of decimals, let's look at converting between decimals and fractions. Now, when you're starting with a fraction and you want to convert it to a decimal, there's two different methods you can use. In different situations, different ones are going to be easier, so we're going to go through them both. The first method, method 1, is to try to write each fraction with a denominator of 10, 100, or 1,000. Then it's really easy to write as a decimal. So let's try thinking about method 1 and seeing if we can do that with any of our fractions down below. How can I rewrite 13 over 200 with a denominator of 10, 100, or 1,000? I can't do 10 very easily. If I wanted to do 100, I would have to divide everything by 2, and that would give me a decimal, so that's not very nice. What if I wanted to get to 1,000? So how can I get from 200 to 1,000? I know that it's times 5. Well, if I do the same thing with my numerator, I will have an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 1,000. So I need to do 13 times 5, which I'm going to do over here. 5 times 3 is 15, 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6, so I get 65 thousandths. Now to write this as a decimal, you have to say it out loud. How would you say that? 65 thousandths. So what that means is it would be 65 in the thousandths place. So if I have a decimal, I know the first place after my decimal is the tenths place. The second place is the thousandths place, and the third place would be the 10,000th place. Sorry. I said that wrong, but if you look at the bottom of your note, there's a nice little chart that's there to help you. And you can see that the third place after the decimal is the thousandths place. So that means that my last digit, the 5, has to be in the thousandth place. So it'll be 0.065. Means I end in the thousandth place. And that will be this as a decimal. Let's try the next one. I have 1/5. I want to rewrite it as a fraction with a denominator of 10, 100, or 1,000. Now I could do any of them. Why not just do 10 though, because I think that's going to be my easiest one. So I'm writing equals because these are equivalent fractions. How do I get from 5 to 10? I multiply by 2. So it'll be 1 times 2. And 1 times 2 gives me 2. So I have 2/10, which again I think of my place value. 2/10 as a decimal would be equal to 0.2 because I have a 2 in the 10th place. Okay, let's look at 11/20. I can't go to 10 easily, but I could go to 100 easily. So let's rewrite this as a fraction with a denominator of 100. How do I get from 20 to 100? Times 5. If you're having a hard time with that, think what's 100 divided by 20, or in this case, it's really nice to think what's 10 divided by 2. So then I'm going to multiply my numerator, or the 11 times 5, and that would give me 55. So I have 55 hundredths. If I want to write that as a decimal, I need my last digit here to be in the hundredths place. So that means it would have to be like this, 0.55. Okay, my last fraction is 3/7. Is there an easy way to convert that into a fraction with a denominator of 10, 100, or 1,000? I'm thinking there isn't an easy way. So this is when we're going to use method 2. You're going to want to write this down on your guided note. Method 2 is to divide the numerator by the denominator, because remember from the Minds On that fractions really just mean division. So 3/7 means we have 3 of 7 parts. So a whole has been divided into 7 pieces, and we have 3 of them. So you can do this on a calculator, or you can do this by hand. I'm going to do it by hand. I'm going to take 3. Oh, I have errors around. I'm going to take 3 and divide it by 7. So I think, can 7 go into 3? No, it can't. So I have my decimal and a 0 and bring up that decimal. Can 7 go into 30? Yes, it can. 7 can go into 34 times, and it's 4 times 7 is 28. 30 minus 28 gives me 2. I add a 0 and bring it down. Can 7 go into 20? Yes, it can. Twice. 2 times 7 is 14. 20 minus 14 gives me 6. Oh, I'm going to add a 0 and bring it down. How many times did 7 go into 60? 8 times. 7 times 8 is 56. And I subtract it, I get a 4. How many times did 7 go into 4? I hope you notice that something is happening here. 7 can go into 4 0 times. Oh, sorry. 7 times 4 is 0. Forgot to add my 0 here, so I got all confused. So this shouldn't be a 0. Hopefully you caught that mistake. Now I need to add my 0 here and bring it down. How many times can 7 go into 40? 7 can go into 40 5 times, and 5 times 7 is 35. So I have 40 minus 35 gives me 5. Add a 0, bring it down. How many times can 7 go into 50? 7 can go into 50 7 times. I'm running out of space here. Let me see what I can do about that. There we go, I was able to move it up. So now I know 7 times 7 is 49. And 50 minus 49 gives me 1. I add a 0 and bring it on down. How many times can 7 go into 10? It goes in once. 1 times 7 is 7. 10 minus 7 is 3. This is the same as the number we started with. So this is what it looks like when we get a repeating decimal. Let's keep going though so you can see it. I add a 0 and I bring it down. How many times can 7 go into 30? It goes in 4 times. 4 times 7 is 28, and I would subtract it and get a 2, and it will go through this whole process again. So that means that this is a repeating decimal, and it would repeat, so I'd put the line across the top like that. So that means that 3/7 written as a decimal is 0.428571 repeated. Hopefully you can see that you can use either method 1 or 2 at any point, but sometimes method 1 is a lot easier than method 2. Okay, let's talk about going from a decimal to a fraction. So sometimes going from a decimal to a fraction, it's actually really easy, as long as you know how to say your decimals properly. So your steps are to write the decimal as you would say, write the fraction as you would say the decimal. And it sounds a little confusing, but hopefully you'll see soon. And then step 2 is just to simplify it, like you need to do with all fractions. So it says write 0.028 as a fraction in simplest form. And I have our handy dandy decimal place value chart. So to say this decimal properly, you need to look at the last place value. So in this last place we have our 8, which is in the thousandths place. Sorry, I highlighted the wrong one. The thousandths place. So I would have my decimal here, and then my 0 to 8. So to say this properly, you would say 28 thousandths. So if I say that 28 thousandths, and I think of it as a fraction, I would get 28 thousandths, or 28 over 1,000. Then I just need to simplify it, and I am done. When I see this, I instantly think by 2, but you could also think by 4, because 28 divided by 4 would give me 7. And then 1,000 divided by 4 would be 250. So you have 7 250ths. And that is in simplest form. The next example says write 5.08 as a mixed number. So a mixed number, hopefully you've seen them before, is a whole number out front of a fraction. So in this case, my whole number is the 5, just like it's my whole number in my decimal. And then I have decimal 0.8. Well, if I look at my decimal place value chart, the 8 is in the hundredths place. So that means that it would be 8 hundredths. So this would be 5 and 8 hundredths. Then I need to simplify this. Don't forget your 5. It doesn't get simplified because it's 5 wholes. But I can again divide both the numerator and the denominator by 4. So 8 divided by 4 is going to give me 2, and 100 divided by 4 is going to give me 25. So I have 5 25ths. That's all for our video lesson today. I hope that you learned about how to convert from decimals to fractions and fractions for decimals. And that's all for now. I'll talk to you later.